It was one of those days when it felt like nothing could go right from the very moment I opened my eyes. I was hit by a deep, overwhelming fatigue that made it seem as though I hadn't slept at all. The exhaustion weighed me down, making every movement feel like a struggle for the past few days. I had been feeling under the weather. But today was different. Today the discomfort had reached a whole new level. Every inch of my body seemed to be in pain. My back ached, my shoulders were stiff, and even my feet felt sore as though I had been walking for miles. I hadn't fully realized how much I had been pushing myself throughout the week. It had been a non-stop whirlwind of tasks, cleaning, cooking, running errands, and managing the never-ending responsibilities. At home, I'd been running on autopilot, always moving from one thing to the next, never once giving myself the chance to rest. But today, it felt as though my body had finally hit its limit and was signaling that it had had enough. I would like to invite you to subscribe to our channel and like our videos. Every click of yours is valuable to us, as it gives us more motivation to continue sharing more meaningful stories with you. If you like our content, we encourage you to share and leave questions. Below every interaction is a way to build a closer and more connected community. And I invite you to stay with us until the end of the video. I am very grateful to you. My muscles felt painfully tight, and it seemed like every part of me was demanding that I slow down and listen to what my body was trying to tell me. The ache in my neck felt as though I was carrying a heavy weight, pressing down relentlessly. Even the simplest movements felt like monumental efforts. My arms and legs felt unusually heavy, as if they had lost their will to cooperate. This wasn't the first time I had felt this kind of exhaustion, but this time it was different. It was much more intense. The usual tiredness I'd been experiencing had been replaced by something deeper, more profound. And no matter how much I tried to push through it, the exhaustion wouldn't budge. I attempted to ignore the pain and carry on, but it quickly became clear that I couldn't just woo myself out of this. I sank down onto the couch, hoping that resting might bring some relief, but instead the discomfort seemed to intensify with each passing moment. I knew I had to take it easy, but the thought of being unable to do anything was eating at me, filling me with a sense of frustration. I couldn't shake off. All I wanted was to feel better to regain some energy. But instead the day seemed to stretch endlessly. And no matter how hard I tried, my body just refused to cooperate. It wasn't unusual for me to feel worn out from time to time. But this was different. This was something deeper. It felt as if the weight of the entire week had suddenly caught up with me all at once, hitting me like a wave I couldn't escape. I sat on the couch, desperately trying to get comfortable. But every attempt to adjust was met with an ache or twinge of pain. The discomfort was constant, a relentless presence that I couldn't ignore each time I shifted my position. I felt another painful stab in my back, and it seemed as though there was no end to it yet. I tried to stretch to relax to find some semblance of relief, but nothing worked. It was as if the more I tried to ease the tension, the more my body refused to respond. I wished so badly that I could just feel better. But no matter how much I wanted it, my body just felt so drained and so sore, as if it were fighting against me. The house was eerily quiet, with only the sound of my own breathing filling the space. I began to wonder if maybe I should just give in, lie down, and rest. For the day, my mind was exhausted from the struggle. And as I sat there contemplating whether it was worth pushing through or simply surrendering to the fatigue, I heard the sound of footsteps approaching. It was Jason, my stepson. I felt a small sense of relief wash over me, knowing that he was someone I could count on. He had always been the kind of person who could sense when something was off, someone with a kind and caring heart. Ever since he married his father, we had developed a strong and easy friendship. Jason was thoughtful, respectful, and always willing to lend a helping hand whenever it was needed, never hesitating to step in when someone was struggling. His presence was a quiet comfort in the midst of my frustration, and I couldn't help but feel grateful for the relationship we had built over time. "Are you okay?" he asked. His voice laced with concern, his eyes never leaving me. I sat there on the couch, feeling small and vulnerable. His gaze was gentle, searching, as if he could somehow read the unspoken discomfort in my posture. It gave him a faint smile. I did my best to mask how uneasy I felt. Despite my efforts, I could tell from the way he looked at me that he noticed something was off for a brief moment. I was at a loss for words. I didn't want to seem weak, burden him with my troubles. but the discomfort in my back was becoming unbearable. And I realized I could no longer keep up the pretense that everything was fine. I knew that if I didn't ask for help now, I'd only end up suffering in silence. So I finally let out a quiet sigh and said, "Actually, think I could use a little help. My back really hurts. Would you mind maybe massaging it for me?" Even as I spoke, I felt a twinge of nervousness. It wasn't easy for me to ask for help, especially when it came to something as personal as this. I didn't want to make him uncomfortable or seem like I was imposing on him, but Jason, my thoughtful and compassionate 24-year-old stepson, had always been the type to offer assistance without hesitation. I knew deep down that he wouldn't mind, even though a part of me still felt awkward about asking. He smiled reassuringly, his expression softening with understanding. "Of course I'll help you," he said without a moment's pause. His willingness to assist me without any sign of hesitation gave me a sense of comfort. Jason had always been kind-hearted and attentive, someone I could count on whenever I needed help, no matter how big or small. The request, his care and consideration were just part of who he was, and I'd always admired that about him. As he gently began to massage my shoulders, I wasn't sure what to expect. I'd never asked him for something like this before, and I wasn't entirely certain what it would feel like. But the moment his hands made contact with my tense muscles, felt an immediate sense of relief. The pressure in my shoulders seemed to ease as he worked in slow, deliberate circles along my back, and I couldn't help but let out a small sigh of gratitude. His touch was firm yet gentle, and each movement seemed to unravel the tightness in my muscles. Bit by bit, I closed my eyes for a brief moment, allowing myself to fully sink into the sensation of his hands working on my sore back. The rhythmic motion of his fingers was like a balm, soothing away the tension and pain that had been building up inside me for days. For once, I didn't have to worry about anything. The only thing I could focus on was the feeling of release in my muscles. It was a rare moment of pure, unadulterated relief, and I allowed myself to fully embrace it, grateful for the comfort Jason was providing me. It felt like a much-needed respite from the overwhelming demands of the day after everything I had been through. Jason's touch was a welcome break, offering a sense of calm and reassurance. His touch was gentle and caring, nothing at all uncomfortable. It was a simple gesture of kindness, one that anyone would extend to someone they truly cared about. I found myself feeling deeply grateful for his presence, for the fact that he was there to offer me his help when I needed it most. In that moment, it hit me how incredibly fortunate I was to have such a considerate stepson. Someone who not only cared for me, but took the time to check in, making sure I was all right. Wasn't a grand gesture, but just a small, thoughtful act of support. And yet, it meant the world to me. As Jason continued his massage, working slowly and attentively on my back, I could feel myself sinking deeper into relaxation. His hands were moving with a delicate rhythm, easing the tension and tightness that had been building in my muscles all day. For the first time in hours, I felt a sense of release. A deep breath that came without the usual ache. The quiet, serene atmosphere of the room, coupled with the steady, soothing motions of his touch, created a sense of peace I hadn't realized I was craving. Then, as his hands traveled further down my back, he said something that caught me a little off guard. "You have a really nice body," he said, his voice soft and sincere, his expression warm and friendly as he glanced up at me with a gentle smile. It wasn't the kind of comment that could be taken the wrong way. It was purely a compliment spoken in a way that was neither inappropriate nor suggestive. Still, it caught me off guard. I wasn't expecting it, especially in the midst of this simple, caring moment. For a moment, I wasn't sure how to respond. I was taken aback, unsure whether I had heard him correctly. But then I realized there was no need for confusion. He was simply being kind, offering a light-hearted compliment meant in the most innocent and friendly way possible. There was no hidden meaning or ulterior motive, just a thoughtful remark that reflected genuine nature. I smiled, doing my best to conceal the flush of embarrassment I could feel creeping up. "Thanks," I said. My voice was a bit shy but sincere, truly grateful for his kindness. I could tell from the way he said it that his words were meant in the most thoughtful, genuine way, and that made me feel just a little bit lighter on a day that had already been so hard. Sometimes it's the simplest things, like a kind word, that can change the course of a day. And hearing something so positive, even if small, made me feel seen and appreciated in a way I hadn't expected. It was a reminder that even the smallest gestures of kindness, no matter how fleeting, can have a lasting impact, especially when you're feeling tired, worn out, and a bit down. Jason wasn't being inappropriate or crossing any boundaries. He was simply offering a sincere, kind word. And in that moment it made all the difference. It was one of those rare moments when a simple compliment completely devoid of any ulterior motive has the power to lift your spirits and make everything feel just a little bit easier to face. It was like a quiet reassurance that I wasn't invisible, that someone cared enough to say something that mattered. When the massage finally came to an end, I felt a tremendous sense of relief. The ache in my back had disappeared, and the sharp, constant pain I had been battling was no longer there. I sat up slowly, stretching my muscles to shake off any remaining tension, and smiled warmly at Jason. "Thank you so much," I said, the words coming out with a sincerity that matched the gratitude. I felt he gave me a gentle smile in return, his eyes soft and full of kindness. "No problem," he said, his tone casual, but there was a warmth in his voice that spoke volumes at that moment. Small as it might have been, it felt like a subtle shift between us. It wasn't that anything strange or uncomfortable had happened. Far from it, but something about the exchange had changed the dynamic between us. Even if it was in an understated way before, we had always gotten along well. But now it felt like there was something deeper, a quiet bond that had been formed. The connection between us, though still simple and without grand gestures, felt more genuine, like we understood each other in a way we hadn't. Before, we didn't need to speak much. It was almost as if we both silently acknowledged that little moment of shared understanding. It was as if that single act of kindness had bridged a gap, making our friendship feel even more solid, even more effortless. I think the reason I felt so moved was that Jason had shown me an incredible amount of care and thoughtfulness, more than I had expected. He didn't have to offer his help, especially not in such a considerate way. And certainly he didn't have to give me a massage. Yet, he did it without hesitation or expectation. And that small but meaningful gesture made me feel truly appreciated. It wasn't just about the act itself. It was a reminder of how far he had come, and how much we had both grown and learned from each other. Being a parent, as rewarding as it can be, isn't always an easy path to walk. There are plenty of challenges along the way. Times when things feel uncomfortable or uncertain, and moments when their relationship can feel strained or awkward. But in that instance, when Jason's thoughtfulness washed over me, I realized just how much respect I had come to have for him. More importantly, it became clear that he also respected me deeply. We had worked through so much, and together we had found a balance, a common ground where we both felt understood and valued. I was profoundly grateful for that. Not just for the help he offered, but for the trust and care that had developed between us over time. As the weeks passed, I felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude for how things had unfolded. Everything seemed to return to a comfortable normal. Jason and I continued to share the everyday moments that made up our lives. Laughing over silly jokes, talking about the ups and downs of our days, and finding joy in the simple routines we had built together. We spent time watching TV and discussing the events of the day, whether from work, school, or the world around us. And at times we would simply sit in quiet companionship, comfortable in each other's presence. It was as though nothing had changed, and yet everything had. Our respect for each other was as strong as ever, and the bond we had formed felt unshakable. But then one afternoon something completely unexpected happened. Hadn't seen it coming, not at all. It was just an ordinary day like so many others, and I was going through my usual routine, thinking that everything was as normal as could be. But then out of nowhere something shifted. I realized that things weren't as simple as I had thought. Later in the afternoon, and I found myself in the kitchen preparing dinner after a long day. The fatigue of the day had begun to settle in my feet, an ache from standing so much, and my mind felt weary from the constant stream of tasks that seemed never ending. I was chopping vegetables, trying to focus on what I was doing, but in truth, all I really wanted was to sit down and rest for just a moment. As I worked in the kitchen, I noticed Jason walking in. He took one look at me and immediately seemed to notice how tired I was. He didn't say anything right away, but I could tell he was fully aware of my exhaustion. After a brief pause, he spoke, his voice gentle yet insistent. "Let me help relax your body again," he said with a softness that matched his concern. "You've been working hard all week, And I can tell you're exhausted. And in that moment I felt something shift again. This time it was a reminder that our relationship had moved beyond the ordinary and into a deeper connection. I paused for a moment, caught off guard by his unexpected offer. It was a thoughtful gesture, one that showed he had noticed the exhaustion weighing me down. His kindness in recognizing how drained I was felt incredibly comforting. And for a brief instant it reminded me that I wasn't alone. I hadn't expected him to offer help again. And yet, here he was extending himself with such genuine care. The mere thought of being able to relax, even for just a little while, sounded incredibly inviting. It was one of those small yet profound moments where someone's consideration truly stood out, and I couldn't help but feel a wave of gratitude for him. I smiled, a little surprised by how his words had landed. It wasn't what I had anticipated, but there was something undeniably warm in the way he said it, something that made me feel cared for in a way I hadn't expected. The fatigue that had been creeping up on me all day seemed to settle more heavily now that he'd pointed it out. My body ached from the endless demands of the day, every muscle in my frame crying out "Forrest." The idea of having someone to help, especially someone who truly cared, felt like an immense relief in that moment. I understood that I needed assistance, and here he was offering it so generously. I still felt a flicker of hesitation within me, a small doubt about whether I should accept, but another part of me felt that it might be just what I needed. "Are you sure?" I asked softly, my voice almost hesitant but filled with curiosity. I needed to know that he was really willing, truly ready to help. Part of me wondered if it was wise to take him up on his offer today when I was feeling especially worn out. But there was something reassuring about his sincerity, something that made the idea of resting seem like the right thing to do. Still, a small part of me wondered if I was imposing too much. I wanted to be sure that he felt comfortable with it too, and not just out of a sense of obligation. He gave a confident nod, his expression kind and genuine. There was no hesitation in his demeanor, and I could see that he wasn't just offering out of politeness. He genuinely wanted to help it. It was clear. He was eager, even excited to assist. With a sense of mutual understanding, we moved into the kitchen together. Diving into the task at hand, we chopped vegetables, stirred the pot, and carefully prepared the meal, working in sync, as if we had been doing this for years. The rhythm of our shared activity felt natural. And as we laughed and chatted, the atmosphere became lighter, warmer. The scent of the food began to fill the kitchen, adding to the feeling of togetherness that was growing between us. By the time we finished cooking, I could sense the accomplishment we shared in creating something truly delicious. There was a quiet satisfaction in the meal we'd prepared. And as we set the table, it felt like more than just the culmination of the day's work. It was a reflection of the kindness we had shared once everything was laid out. We made plans to unwind later, enjoying each other's company. He seemed genuinely excited about it, his enthusiasm palpable as he spoke. I smiled, great, not just for the meal we had prepared, but for the time we'd spent together. There was a quiet joy in the way we connected, and I could see that he too was looking forward to the evening ahead afterward. Jason and I decided to create a calming environmental space where I could unwind and find some peace. We dimmed the lights, allowing the room to be bathed in a soft, soothing glow, and lit a few candles, their flames flickering gently and casting a warm, inviting light across the space. The delicate dance of the candle light seemed to add an extra layer of comfort to the room, and the soft melodic strains of calming music played in the background, setting the perfect tone for relaxation. I could already feel the weight of the day starting to lift, the tension in my body beginning to ease as the atmosphere around me transformed. Jason, always considerate and in tune with my needs, offered to help me unwind even further. With a gentle but assured touch, he led me to a comfortable chair, his hand guiding me with such care that I felt safe in his presence. He positioned me in a way that felt entirely natural, and then with a quiet confidence began massaging my shoulders. His hands moved with precision, each motion purposeful as he applied just the right amount of pressure to the areas where stress had settled, especially in the tight knots that had formed over the course of the day. His touch was gentle yet firm, and as he worked, I could feel the relief building gradually, as though the burden I had been carrying was being carefully, methodically, lifted from me as his fingers pressed into the muscles along my neck and shoulders. The tension seemed to melt away in a steady stream. It wasn't just my body that was responding. It felt as if the worries and anxieties that had been clouding my mind were being released as well. The deeper Jason's hands worked, the more I sank into the chair, my body relaxing, my mind quieting with each movement. I felt a greater sense of peace, a rare feeling in the midst of everything else that had been going on in my life. The room, the atmosphere, Jason's touch, everything around me contributed to a sense of calm I hadn't realized I needed so desperately. For the first time in what felt like days, I could finally breathe without the heaviness of stress hanging over me. Then, just as I was starting to lose myself entirely in the soothing rhythm of his massage, Jason paused. His hands rested lightly on my back, and the sudden stillness in the room caught my attention. His voice broke the quiet, soft and somewhat uncertain, as if he were carefully choosing his words. "Would you like me to continue?" he asked. There was a slight hesitation in his tone, and then he added, "I could help you with something else, something that might bring you even more relief." His words hung in the air, and I turned slightly in my seat. Meeting his gaze for a moment, I wasn't sure how to respond before I could formulate an answer. He spoke again, his voice lower now, almost reluctant. "A happy ending," he said, and the words hit me with unexpected force. My heart skipped a beat, caught off guard by his bluntness. It was the last thing I had anticipated, and in that brief moment I found myself frozen, unsure of what to make of this new uncharted territory. Between us, the silence stretched out heavy with unspoken thoughts, and I could feel the air between us thickened with tension. Jason's words were out there now, and the weight of his suggestion lingered not pleasantly, but with a sense of vulnerability that I hadn't expected. It wasn't just about the words themselves, but the way he said them, quietly, with a mixture of confidence and a trace of uncertainty that made me stop and think as I sat there processing his offer. It slowly dawned on me that in the time we had spent together, we had forged a connection, one that was more profound than I had realized. Our friendship had grown into something deeper, something built on a foundation of trust and understanding. There was a raw honesty in his voice, and in that moment he understood how far we had come in our relationship. What had started as a casual connection had blossomed into something more meaningful, and the openness of the moment made me appreciate the comfort we had found in each other. Though it wasn't what I had anticipated when we began, there was an undeniable bond between us now, one that felt genuine and true. The trust, the shared experience, and the vulnerability made me feel that we had reached a point where this moment, this offer, wasn't just about the physical gesture. It was about something deeper, a mutual understanding that had developed between us without either of us fully realizing it. Until now, the honesty and openness of his words made me realize just how comfortable we had become in each other's company. We had crossed boundaries before, but this time felt different. Intimate in a way that both left me feeling exposed and at the same time strangely secure, as if I had entered uncharted territory, yet found a sense of safety within it. A flood of emotions surged through me, overwhelming. My senses, curiosity, hesitation, yes, but also something deeper, something more primal. There was an undeniable pull, a magnetic force drawing me in, a desire I tried to ignore, but could no longer push away. For a brief moment I questioned whether this was the right path to take, whether surrendering to the moment would alter everything between us in a way we couldn't undo. But as I looked into his eyes, that doubt dissipated and something stirred inside me, igniting a fire I couldn't extinguish. My body, still humming with the lingering tension of the day, seemed to respond before my mind could even catch up with what was happening. I felt a warmth rise within me, an undeniable longing that had been quietly simmering beneath the surface, but now surged forward with a force that left me breathless. I hesitated for only a fraction of a second, caught between the weight of the moment and the intensity of what was unfolding, my breath caught in my throat. As the realization hit me, the desire that had been building between us for so long could no longer be ignored, pushed away, or concealed. It was undeniable. It was here, and it was all-encompassing. Despite the uncertainty still tugging at me, there was a deeper part of me, a quieter part that knew with certainty what I wanted. I wanted this. I wanted him in this moment. In this way, the vulnerability that coursed through me only seemed to amplify the intensity of the desire, making it sharper, more consuming. I took a steadying breath, trying to gather my scattered thoughts, and with a blend of anticipation, surrender, and a strange sense of acceptance, I whispered, "Yes." A wide knowing grin spread across his face, And in that instant I saw something flicker in his eyes, a spark, an excitement, an anticipation that made my heart flutter uncontrollably. His smile wasn't just the smile of someone who found amusement in the moment. It was something far more profound. A smile that spoke of a connection beyond words. Words, a promise of things yet to come, and an unspoken understanding that this moment was a turning point for us both. He took a deliberate step closer, and with it his presence seemed to fill every inch of the space between us, enveloping the air in a way that made everything feel more intense, more charged. "I'm ready for you today," he said, his voice calm yet unmistakably warm, the kind of warmth that settled in my chest and made my heart flutter. There was a quiet confidence in his tone, a certainty that carried with it something more profound, something that sent a ripple of electricity through my entire being. The way he said it, so sure, so direct, spoke to me on a deeper level, making it clear that his words weren't just spoken for the sake of being heard. They were a promise, a pledge of something more, something that stirred me in a way I hadn't expected. The sincerity in his voice was undeniable, and the weight of his words left me breathless, caught somewhere between anticipation and disbelief. As he stood there, his gaze softened, and the smile that had graced his lips lingered, but now it carried an intensity that mirrored the depth of his words. It was as if the smile wasn't just a gesture of kindness, but a reflection of everything unspoken, everything that was happening between us in that moment. It felt as though the air around us had shifted, as though some invisible barrier had been lowered, and the rest of the world, the noise and distractions that normally surrounded us, faded into the background. All that mattered, all that existed in that space was him. His words, his presence, and the way they made me feel seen, understood, and above all wanted. The realization settled within me, like a weight I was more than ready to carry. To my surprise, he didn't just approach me. He came closer with a kind of tenderness and intensity that felt completely new, something I had never experienced before. There was a softness in his touch, but it was underpinned by a depth that reached far beyond the physical. It was as if his every movement, his every step was calculated with curious, though he wasn't just touching me, but connecting with me in a way that transcended the moment. I could feel it. Something had changed between us. Something subtle but unmistakable. The very air around us seemed thicker, now heavier with a shared understanding, a quiet recognition that this moment was different from anything we had shared before. It wasn't just a physical closeness. It was an emotional openness, a vulnerability that we both seemed to be leaning into without hesitation. Each moment between us felt more profound than the last, as if we were slowly peeling back layers, uncovering something raw, something real. There was no rush, no need to hurry through it. It was as if time had slowed, and we had both become immersed in the connection unfolding before us. With every touch, with every word, it felt as though we were not just exploring each other physically, but emotionally, mentally, in a way that was both exhilarating and grounding. It wasn't simply about being near each other. It was about being exposed, vulnerable in the truest sense of the word. And yet, there was a sense of safety in that exposure, a grounding sense of trust that made everything feel right. In that moment, we were not just two people in the same space. We were two souls entwined in a way that was undeniable and incredibly intimate. His touch, simultaneously gentle and firm, communicated a profound sense of respect and an understanding that transcended mere words. It wasn't just a brief spark of attraction that would fade away. In time, it was something far more significant, something that felt like it was on the verge of revealing itself. A discovery of a connection that was real, unspoken and untouched by the ordinary. The sheer intensity of the moment made my heart race. Yet paradoxically, it also soothed the most vulnerable parts of my being, as if it was balancing something wild and calming within me. As we shared this experience together, everything around us seemed to shift. There was a serenity to it, a quiet peace that enveloped us like the most comforting embrace. Time slowed, and with it, the need to rush faded completely. There was no urgency, no chase to capture moments that would slip away. Every instant we shared felt full and present, as though it was the only thing that mattered. Each touch, each glance was both purposeful and effortless, as though we had always known how to move in harmony with each other. As though our connection was simply part of a natural rhythm. We were no longer merely two individuals standing side by side. We were two souls intricately intertwined, living together in a perfect and spoken unity, as though the world outside us had dissolved entirely. It felt as if we had unlocked a hidden realm, A space where vulnerability flowed freely, where trust could flourish without fear of being exposed or judged. Each movement between us was laden with significance, as if we weren't just discovering one another, but uncovering a connection that ran so deep and defied explanation, something sacred and profound that neither of us had fully understood. Until that moment, the intensity of it was like a wave crashing over me with a force that was overwhelming, yet somehow deeply magnetic, pulling me in with every pulse of my heart. Yet, even in the overwhelming rush of emotions, there was a grounding sense of comfort, as if I had found a haven. I didn't realize I was seeking every moment felt like a natural extension of the one before it, where each breath we shared seemed to synchronize with the other, in perfect alignment. In that moment I felt completely at ease, as though every worry, every doubt, every uncertainty had been swept away into the air, leaving behind only peace. There was no tension, no hesitation, no wondering about what this why or where it would take us. Felt right. It felt undeniable. And as we stood there in that place where everything else fell away, I could feel myself surrendering fully to the experience, placing my trust in him without a second thought, knowing with absolute certainty that this moment was real, and that we were both exactly where we needed to be. As we continued to move together, seamlessly lost in the rhythm of one another's presence, it became clear that what we were sharing was far more than just an intimate exchange. It was a profound revelation in that shared moment. There was an undeniable clarity and almost sacred connection that left me breathless yet fulfilled in a way I had never experienced before. There was no sense of guilt, no creeping shadow of doubt lurking at the edges of my consciousness, no internal conflict to wrestle with in that precious instant. It felt as though everything that had ever held me back, every fear, every question, every lingering uncertainty had completely disappeared. The weight of the past, the crushing pressure of external expectations, and the constant uncertainties that so often clouded my mind, all melted away, vanishing into oblivion, as if they had never existed. It was as though the entire world around us had come to a halt, leaving only the two of us suspended in time, completely immersed in the here and now. In that space we were utterly free in the most authentic sense of the word, free from judgment, free from the burdens of what had come before, and free to simply exist in the flawless unspoken connection that we had forged between us within that sanctuary. There was no room for anything other than the two of us. There was no need for external validation, no yearning for answers. Only the pure, unfiltered essence of us sharing this extraordinary experience together. The silence that enveloped us spoke volumes more than words ever could. Every glance, every touch, every subtle gesture conveyed emotions and understanding that transcended the limits of language. Were reveled in the simplicity of it all, in the profound mutual understanding that we were both fully invested in this moment in each other, with no reservations or distractions. This wasn't just a physical connection. It was something much deeper, something that went beyond the ordinary realm of human experience. It was as though with each passing second we were uncovering a new, richer layer of our bond, discovering new depths of ourselves and of each other, as if the very fabric of our connection was expanding before us in real time. The satisfaction I felt was not simply rooted in the physical connection we had shared, but in the deeper, more profound understanding that we had both entered this space with complete openness, and without the slightest hesitation. There was no fear of what might come next, only a shared trust that allowed us to fully embrace the moment. What we shared was more than an encounter. It was an unspoken harmony between us, a seamless balance of longing and tenderness that filled the air with an almost electric charge. It was a kind of unity that took us both by surprise, leaving us breathless. Not in anxiety, but in the most gratifying and fulfilling way imaginable. This was not just a meeting of bodies but of souls. A perfect union that created a profound sense of completeness within me. As we're maimed together in the quiet aftermath, a deep, unshakable contentment enveloped me, confirming that what we had experienced was not just meaningful, but extraordinary. As I looked into his eyes, I realized that in that moment, we had both discovered precisely what we needed from each other. No more, no less. Each of us perfectly aligned, fulfilled, and at peace. Thank you for staying with us until the end. Before we say goodbye, if you have not yet subscribed, I invite you to press the subscribe button. Your support, even if it seems like a small gesture, means a lot to us and drives us to continue creating content with heart. Don't forget to give it a like if you liked what we shared today, as every interaction helps us grow. and allows us to continue connecting with you through stories that matter. Thank you for being part of this community. Don't forget to give it a like if you liked what we shared today, as every interaction helps us grow and allows us to continue connecting with you through stories that matter. Thank you for being part of this community.